Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Michelle Saeed, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're thrilled to have Khris Kennedy joining us. He is the founder and principal consultant of Focused Consulting Group. From 20 years as a senior pastor to scaling one of the largest insurance agencies in the US, Khris now empowers businesses and nonprofits through strategic planning, leadership coaching, and behavioral analysis. He's transforming organizations with a client-centric approach. We'll explore his founding journey, how Focused Consulting Group is driving impact, and what the vision looks like for scaling his dynamic firm. So with that being said, let's dive in. Khris, welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure having you on. Take us back to the beginning. What inspired you to start the company? Obviously, your background is super extensive. What made you want to become an entrepreneur and start this?
Oh, I think I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always been one of those kind of guys that didn't want to have a boss, right? And so I always wanted to own my own thing, do my own thing. And about back in 2014, we bought this little bitty tiny insurance agency, and the Lord just blessed it and it exploded. And all of a sudden we owned multiple locations and had everything from independent to captive agencies. And it was just crazy. And we grew into one of the largest privately held insurance agencies in the US. And so along the way, what happens is guys start calling you going, dude, how in the world are you doing it? And so I started taking on clients that were other insurance agents and basically coaching them on how to grow an insurance agency. And a lot of them didn't have any idea of how to look at the ROI on their leads. They didn't even know how to do a lead spend or any of those different kind of things. And just how to run a business in general, how to hold their people accountable, how to set success matrix and all of those different kind of things. And so one day I turned to my wife and I said, you know what? I have more fun watching these guys be successful than I even do our success. And she goes, then why in the world are we selling insurance? Because nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, I cannot wait to sell more insurance. And I went, yeah, why are we doing this? And so we sold all of our agencies and I started Focused Consulting Group and really just thought that I would just coach insurance agents. That would be my niche and I would focus in on those guys and help them be successful. But inevitably what happens is, and along the way, I had always been doing some level of executive coaching. Even back when I was pastoring, I was doing some executive coaching, just always, but as a side deal. But inevitably, what happens is this insurance agent's talking to this buddy of his who's the CEO of this company over here and talking about what we're working on. And that guy goes, man, I want to talk to that guy. And all of a sudden, I'm getting a call going, hey, would you spend some time with me also? And till here years later, all of a sudden, we look up and I have one insurance agent, I think, as a client now. And so we moved everywhere from in the construction space to healthcare space to helping companies scale to who all are we working with? The insurance space, still some. We're working right now with a really large CPA firm that's looking to do scaling and what they're doing. We've worked in retail. And so we help companies do everything from gain clarity and cohesion in their leadership teams. We do a lot of work with C-suite level teams and really coming together as what we call a team one and learning how to work best as a team one, how to set strategy and how to move forward in that strategy. Even it's amazing. You can work with billion-dollar companies and they struggle with how in the world do we set strategy for the future, just spend all their time putting out the fires of today without really understanding how do we move forward into tomorrow. So we do a lot of that. We also help companies. We do a lot of organizational development. And what I mean by that is helping companies where they're going through a transition time, like maybe the founder's getting ready to step off and is handing the keys over to the next generation and helping them design their org charts and who's over what and how they do what and helping design. We've gone so far as to help design board documents of the establishment of boards for companies that are moving into that capacity of things. And then I continue to do a lot of one-on-one executive coaching just on leadership and how to move their people forward, how to hold them accountable, how to manage their own time, that kind of stuff.
Incredible.
So
Yeah, no, I appreciate you breaking that down. So it looks like you're industry agnostic as far as a lot of that strategic planning goes. And really interesting to see now that you only work with like probably one insurance agent. Your bread and butter essentially past that was insurance agents and helping them scale their agency, which is actually quite interesting. How is everything productized from like an engagement standpoint? What does that look like? Because I know you mentioned one-on-one coaching and then also doing a lot of that transformative work with teams and then with some of the leaders in C-suite. So what does a typical client engagement look like as far as like from start to finish, if you can break that down for us?
So for us, what it does, it always starts with a 2-day offsite where we come together with the ELT or the C-suite, whoever it is. And sometimes we come into some lower level teams, but it really works best when it starts from the top and works its way down. And typically what happens, we'll come into a 2-day offsite. We run through what we call our 4 C's. And so what we try to do is we try to understand clarity, critical, what's the most critical thing, cohesion, how do we build cohesion around the most critical deal of what critical issue that they're dealing with, and then cascade, how do we cascade that down through the organization. And so from there, typically I'll work with the CEO one-on-one in executive coaching, and then one of my other consultants will work with the rest of the C-suite. And then really what we encourage companies to do is from there, we call it cascade coaching. And we want at least 2 people to be coached in every layer of your organization. And that does 2 different things for the organization. One, it scales the leadership capability of the people that are in the organization, which only makes the organization more effective in what they're doing. But it also gives us a unique insight into what's really going on in the company and allows us to report that back to the leadership team. The higher you go in an organization, the more sanitized the information is that you get. And so by us embedding throughout the different layers of the company, we're getting that unvarnished truth of here's really what's happening. Here's really what morale's like. Here's the stuff that's really jamming us up. And obviously we never violate the confidentiality of the one-on-one conversations that happen in coaching. We're able to take that information and synthesize it and bring it back to the leadership teams and able to say, hey, here's what's really happening in your organization right now, and areas to help them identify those areas that they need to focus on and fires potentially that they need to put out, and other areas where, hey, we're really successful here and we didn't even realize how successful we were. And so that's how it works with us. And typically we engage with a company through 4 quarters. So we will come back every quarter and help with. So the first one is really going through those 4 C's. And then from that point forward, the clarity part is already there. Now we're just again identifying what's now the most critical thing for us to work on here in Q2. And how do we get cohesion around that? And then how do we cascade it through the organization? And we do that for a year. Now, we do have some companies that we've worked with for years. And just because they really like the process and feel like that it keeps them on track. And that's what we do.
Okay, so it's typically a year-long engagement from what it sounds like, but routinely checking in on a quarterly basis. And I love the fact that you mentioned really embedding you and your team into all layers of the organization because the constraints don't just start from the leaders sometimes, it's also the other areas. And that's what's going to allow an organization to scale effectively because you're standardizing a lot of those procedures going in. I think that's super interesting because we've had other change management consultants on this podcast, and I've never actually heard about that strategy taking place. So as far as yeah, go
We do
ahead.
think that we really do think that's what sets us apart as a company. And the cascade coaching is the key to what we do. And if you talk to my clients, they will say that's where the greatest value comes from. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as far as scaling goes, what does that look like for you as like a founder? Obviously, with your fulfillment model, it's probably very customized and tailored depending on the organization you work with. How are you thinking about productizing your offer in a way to where it is scalable and manageable? Like, what does that next step like look like for you as a founder?
For us, there's always going to be the limitation of me personally, right? I can only work with so many clients at a given time. And so, like right now, I have a waiting list of clients. And so, what I'm doing right now is training up some of my senior consultants on how to do, they attend those offsites with me. They sit in the second chair. We call it the second chair. They sit in the second chair and participate from there, but I sit in the first chair. So, I'm training them up to ultimately put them in the first chair with then another senior consultant that would get raised up so that can begin to happen. And so really it's about me training and coaching my existing consultants so that they can it's not always having to be me being the one that people are asking for. And that's really what has to happen for us to start taking those next steps and those next levels of things.
Do you feel like a lot of businesses just ask for you sometimes and that's the case, or what's been that experience like?
Yeah, 100% right now, right, is that people They want the chief facilitator, right? They want the guy because people, when they, all of our business is word of mouth. And so it's just this guy says, this was amazing. And so I get a call from this company that says, hey, we heard the work that you did. Come work with us kind of thing. And so everything that we do has really been based upon just reputation, right? Doing a good job for companies. And so then they tell their friends who tell their friends who tell their friends. But as a result, they all go, but we want Khris to come do it. And so that's a part that we've got to figure out how to change. And some of that, we've started some of that, and we're doing that by some smaller companies where I'm already putting my senior consultants where they're first chair and doing that. Companies, and the way that you do that, Michelle, quite honestly, is that you have to outprice them, where a mid-sized company can't afford to have me be the one to come out and do it, is the way that you do it. Hey, I can come out and do it, but it's X number of dollars. Or you could have one of my senior consultants who is a stud at this, and it's now a more affordable option for you. So
Yeah, that's an interesting approach as far as the pricing goes. You could still capitalize on that opportunity, especially in your marketplace as well, where they don't miss out on that. So you're giving options essentially to the end consumer. So you mentioned word of mouth, building on your growth. How are you primarily generating leads? Is it just word of mouth, or are you doing anything with social media, paid ads? What does all of that look like?
we don't do any paid ads at all. I try to be active on LinkedIn just because people tend to run to your LinkedIn just to verify who you are. You know what I'm saying? And hey, I've heard about this guy, but they want to come and see what your face looks like. And so I try to write articles on leadership and that kind of stuff to keep that fresh so they understand my mindset and all that. But they verify you in those ways. And then it's an introductory call. But no, every bit of our business is via word of mouth. It's just been this person talking to this person, talking to this person. And there are so many companies that are dying to change their culture and to have better leaders in their organization, that there's no loss for number of people that need it. And so as soon as they talk to somebody that has been helped, then they're already, by the time they do an introductory call with me, they're usually already ready to sign the contract.
Mm, yeah. So as far as it goes, a lot of it is your network, essentially leveraging some thought leadership online, posting on your platform. Are you primarily doing that on your personal page, or is that on like your company page that you have set up, like a lot of the source content?
My personal page right now. And we actually have been talking about that, about we probably need to start putting more content actually on the focused LinkedIn page. We have a really robust website. And so we do see a lot of people who go to our website to really check out what we do. And is that on our website, they can really dig into what are our 4 C's? What does that experience look like? We line out typically, how does this play itself out, and what you can expect to experience and all those kind of things. So,
Incredible. So
yeah.
on that, as far as like predictability goes, right? It's a topic we talk a lot about on the podcast is consistency when it comes to lead gen, right? And sometimes with referrals and word of mouth, like we've had other consultants express frustrations that it's not always the most consistent, or like their pipeline dries up. What's like your perspective as far as building predictability in a business as far as lead gen goes? Is that sort of the next step for you as a founder as you're looking at scaling, growing your team as well? Maybe looking at digital marketing, lead gen, paid ads. What does that look like as far as the next step?
I think that if we ever got to the point where I felt like the pipeline was drying up, that's something that I would entertain. The good thing about us is that we have enough long-term clients that have communicated, hey, we don't see an end to this relationship. And look, we get that everything is economy driven. And when if the economy were really tank, we understand that we're a luxury item at that point in when it comes to companies. And so we're aware of that. But if I ever got a sense of that, I'd probably dig into that more. Right now, we've got a waiting list of clients that are ready to work with us. And so it's until then, it's not something that I would do just because we've never had to do it. And so I guess that's just the blessings of God. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've never had one paid ad. I've never done any of that kind of stuff other than, like I said, getting on LinkedIn and making sure that it stays relevant and current. But
Yeah.
because
Really
again,
cool.
every company is dying for it, and CEOs talk to each other. And so, as long as they're not a competitor, you don't tend to get a lot of, hey, my competitor called me and told me what a great job you did helping turn around their company. We don't get that kind of referral, but they're talking to their friend that's in a different vertical, and inevitably the same question gets asked every time. Hey, have you ever worked in our industry before? And I sometimes I can say yes, and sometimes I say no, but the answer is always the same. The problems in your vertical are the same problems in everybody else's vertical, right? That those people are people, and so the problems are the same. And
Yeah. Yeah,
but
absolutely. So, as far as it looks like with sales, that sales process, how you're initiating some of those conversations with clients, closing them into actual clients, how are you going about that? Is it yourself having those conversations, or as a founder, have you established like a sales team to handle some of that execution as well? Walk us through how all that looks like.
no, right now it's all me. Now I do have some of my senior consultants that are selling on their own, right? They're getting their own, they're bringing clients to the table themselves. And so they're now out there enough where their people are asking for them, which is good. That's what we want. But no, right now, typically what happens is I'll get an email. Hey, Chris, let me introduce you to Bob. The client is initiating the email, one of my current clients or past clients. Let me introduce you to Bob. Bob owns XYZ company or CEO of XYZ company. And I think you guys ought to have a conversation. And then I email Bob back, go, hey, Bob, let's jump on a quick call. And we jump on a call. And by that point, he's already looked at our website and he's already looked at my LinkedIn and he's already talked to his friend who was a client. And he asked him, have you ever worked with anybody like us? And I say what the spiel that I just said to you, people are people, and then walk them through in my words. Here's what you can expect to happen. And to be real honest, it's real funny, Michelle, because we do have clients like when you do the cascade coaching and you report back up to the executive team, there's been times where those executive teams don't want to hear what you have to say, right? They feel like you just called their baby ugly. And so we've actually been fired from companies before because we told them what was going on. And so with their company, but we go, hey, it's our job to be honest with you. It doesn't do us any good to sugarcoat it. And, but that's rare. But yeah, so that's how the sales process goes.
Yeah, so it looks like it's really linked to that word of mouth process at the end of the day. Like a lot of the clients, the leads who reach out, they hear from some of the former clients or existing clients you've worked with on what the process is. So it sounds like it's like a very condensed sales process essentially. It's not something super extensive.
No, our runway is usually anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks before my call to a signed contract.
Wow, that's super short.
That's what I'm saying. It's just because by the time they talk to me, they've already done their research. They've already heard from their friend. They just want to hear it from my mouth. And then they got to sit back and ask the question, hey, am I willing to spend that much money? And our conversion rate of people that call me is greater than 90%.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's by the time they get to me, they've already sold themselves, or they wouldn't be having the call.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. As far as really like the vision for the next 6 to 12 months, obviously there's so much growth and momentum you've already achieved and success. What does that look like going into 2025? What are you most like focused on as far as growth goes?
It is scaling it out with my other consultants. My other consultants really coming to the forefront. It's the only way that we can scale is they've got to start building enough a reputation for themselves. And they're doing that, right? They're doing a great job of it. We are moving into a new space. We brought on a new consultant that we're really excited about. We do some fractional work. Like I have a fractional CFO that works for me. I've got a fractional marketing and advertising person that works for me. So if your company needs help in that area, we can offer fractional services. But we just brought on a new consultant that we're super excited about. He really focuses in the first time business buyer. And so that person that goes, hey, I'm ready to step out into that world myself. I'm going to buy a business. I'm going to start a business. He's got that entrepreneurial mindset. And hey, I went to school. I've been working for this company for this many years. I've saved my money. I'm ready to do this thing. And so we're really going to work hard in 2025 of putting him in front of enough of those kind of people in conferences and those kind of things. The great thing is that he's already thought of as really one of the thought leaders in that space. He gets asked to speak at a lot of those kind of events and those kind of things. He had just never thought about monetizing his knowledge. And he was actually a client of mine. And so I said, well, why don't you come work for me? And he said, yeah, let's do that. And so we're going to work real hard. I think that's an untapped space of really offering consulting to those people from everywhere from how do I do business value? How do I value the company? How do I step in and look at the existing staff and see do they fit what we're trying to accomplish? A lot of guys just don't know how to do just some of those basic things of business acquisition. And so help them all through that process. And even making the change, the big shift for them is the mindset shift from being a worker to being an owner and
Yeah.
helping them take that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So really a lot of emphasis on the business acquisition point of view, really how they can start to acquire their own clients. And that's going to be the mechanism for Focus Consulting Group to diversify as well on the acquisition front so that outside of word of mouth, you have other channels to bring in clients, right, through some of the consultants on the fulfillment side of things. What do you feel as a founder is like the biggest bottleneck to growth that you're seeing as you're looking at scaling? Is it more on the sales, marketing, operations? What does that look like for you as far as really scaling grows?
Biggest bottleneck for me are quality consultants. And so I'm constantly on the look for people. Look, there are a lot of people that call themselves consultants out there or call themselves coaches out there who they've never done it, right? They've never sat in a seat, that all they have is maybe some academic knowledge on things. But when a CEO goes, yeah, what do I do about this? They don't have a way of contextualizing that. And so for me, it is identifying two different things. One, senior consultants are, for me, have to be people who have sat in a C-suite chair themselves at some point for you to be considered as a senior consultant for us. We do have lower level consultants that work for us that we're training up, and they're just having to learn by through the training that we do, by also being with us when we do the offsites and those kind of things, and hearing how we answer questions and those kind of deals, because we're not an unbiased coach, right? So there's two different types of coaching. There's unbiased coaching, which never gives you don't ever give the client your opinion, right? They believe that the client needs to come up with the idea themselves, and that's always going to lead them to a better result. And there's no doubt that if you come up with the idea, you're much more likely to follow through with the idea. But then there's bias coaching that says, hey, but I'm going to step in if I notice that you're about to step off a cliff, and I'm going to say, oh, I don't think I would do that. Here's maybe a better option. And so we are self-admitted that we're biased. We're going to give you our opinion if you ask for it, and at times we're going to give you our opinion even if you don't ask for it, if it feels like you're about to step off a cliff. And
Yeah.
so because we're biased, you have to have a certain level of experience. So that's my bottleneck, is finding quality people that can do that job.
Yeah. And even on that piece of acquisition, them having that sales ability to bring new business in as well into your organization, especially as a founder, at some point you're going to have to focus on some of those founder led activities, scaling yourself outside of the business, and then having them bring in new clients, keeping the pipeline going and expanding as well into different industries as far as that goes. Yeah, before we do wrap up, any piece of advice you would give to our audience? Some of them are founders, entrepreneurs as well, looking to start their business or to join other businesses. What would you say on one last note?
My number one thing that I tell everybody, and I think is the number one thing that is not done well in most organizations across America, and that is a simple phrase that clarity is kindness. When you're talking with a potential client, tell them the truth about what you can and cannot do. That's a kindness to you, and it's a kindness to them. When you're talking to, if you have people that direct report to you, we tend to speak a lot in euphemisms, and we think that in inference that we're going to be understood, and we leave our people open to disaster. And so the best thing that you can do is to be clear and direct with what your expectations are, and hold people accountable to those expectations. And that people sometimes think that's harsh, and it's really our greatest act of kindness that we can give. And clarity is kindness, and live in that clarity.
Beautiful. On that note, that wraps up an inspiring episode of Founders Future. Khris, thank you so much for being a part of our show and sharing your remarkable journey this far, from leading churches to scaling an insurance agency. Wow, and now empowering so many organizations with focused consulting groups. To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And of course, you can also follow Khris over at focusedlc.com or follow him on LinkedIn where he is posting a lot of his thought leadership on there as well. So we'll link both links in the summary below. And for more resources and insights on how you can scale your business, visit us over at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses scale through trained appointment setters and world-class sales and marketing systems. So until then, everyone, keep climbing, and we'll see you all in the next one.